After generating massive speculation recently concerning a possible third run for the presidency, Mitt Romney announced earlier today that he would not, in fact, be running for the Republican nomination for the presidency for the election in 2016. In a call with a large group of supporters, he said, "After putting considerable thought into making another run for president, I've decided it is best to give other leaders in the party the opportunity to become the next nominee. I did not want to make it more difficult for someone else to emerge who may have a better chance of becoming the president." Kind of a bold statement. He added that it was unlikely that he would change his mind. Now, we do have a lot of reactions. That is very funny back there. Now, we do have reactions both from other potential nominees and from members of the media. Immediately, I thought it was interesting that Jeb Bush put out a statement on Facebook saying, "Mitt is a patriot, and I join many in hoping his days of serving our nation and our party are not over. I look forward to working with him." Don't ride softly into that good night, Mitt Romney.
Okay, so here's the statement that Jeb Bush actually wanted to put out. Followed with a
in terms of their yes.
Yes! Okay. And that was quickly also followed by Chris Christie making further guttural sounds that no human wants to hear. Chris Christie ate a half a box of Dunkin' Donuts in celebration when Mitt Romney dropped out. Okay, I'm a bad guy. But I thought I compromised with half a dozen, right? Okay.
You know, making fun of Chris Christie's weight, they say it's low-hanging fruit. I say it's low-hanging high-fructose corn syrup.
I thought you were going to go with, like, Chris Christie says, but what's fruit? Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So the reason I say that, and the relevant part of the story in regards to Jeb Bush that John just brought up, is that there are three candidates that the establishment wants. Now, when we talk about establishment, you have to be clear about who we mean, right? Because there's a lot of people with a lot of money on the Republican side, but some of them are not necessarily, quote unquote, the establishment that we're used to. When we say establishment, we're talking about special interests, the guys who've been running the Republican Party for decades. So the Chamber of Commerce, corporations, bankers, etc. Wall Street predominantly, okay? So they're not exclusively, but they're a huge heavyweight in this. No Chris Christie, pun intended. And so when you think about Chris Christie, and I think that's the interesting one there, like he has this appeal theoretically to the common man because he goes out on the Jersey boardwalk, punches people in the face, tells them to shut up and stuff. But you have to understand the people who actually love Chris Christie are Wall Street bankers. And they don't love him because of his antics on the boardwalk. They love him because, where's your bread? Washington, I'm going to butter that bread up, right? And they know they can rely on Chris Christie, they can rely on Jeb Bush, and obviously they could rely on Mitt Romney. So when Mitt Romney goes out, that means that Jeb Bush and Chris Christie are going to get a lot more donor money. Yummy for their tummy.
And one interesting fact about that transition is that we do know that recently, I believe Ben thought this was quite conspiratorial, Mitt Romney had met up with Jeb Bush. He's also planning later today to have dinner with Chris Christie, which is interesting. We don't know where he will throw, some of his former campaign staff, some of his former donors, but I have to assume that if you're Chris Christie or Jeb Bush, that is a delicious dish indeed.
Right now, the minute he made that announcement, Jeb Bush and Chris Christie ran to their phones and all their finance guys so quick. They went down the list of billionaires, the guys who give the most money, so Adelson, Koch, etc., because they wanted to beat each other to the punch. I guarantee you that at least 5 enormous multimillionaire and possibly billionaire donors got a call from Jeb Bush and Chris Christie literally at the same time today, okay? Like, oh, hold on, Jeb, that's Chris, okay? So that's what's going on. Now, don't get me wrong, the Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, they're all going to call those guys too, but that money is less likely to go in that direction. It's not going to go in Huckabee's direction. And so they don't know whether they can fully trust Rand Paul. Ted Cruz sometimes throws a monkey wrench into things in a way that they are not comfortable with. They got a nice gravy train. They don't upset it. Key things are going to go the way that we want them to.
I also thought it was interesting that we did see recently, while the speculation was sort of brewing about a possible Romney run, that he hadn't been invited to the extremely important Koch summit that was going on. And so, I mean, that's not to say that other major donors or billionaires wouldn't have thrown support behind him if he did run. They likely would have. But at least some factions of that already weren't excited about a third run for Mitt Romney.
Yeah, and so the Kochs are in a weird spot here because they're a little bit more libertarian. So they're actually more likely to hear Ted Cruz and Rand Paul out than the rest of the speculators. And don't forget, Koch's Industries makes good money from Quilted Northern and toilet paper and Dixie cups and stuff like that, and their oil business. But they actually make a ton of money from financial speculation. So that's why they're also in league. That's why it's a complicated situation. They're also in league with the Wall Street guys. They don't want Wall Street regulated. They don't want the financial industry regulated at all. But they're also a little bit more libertarian. So, but the rest of the establishment is not interested in the Rand Pauls and the Ted Cruzes nearly as much as they are in Jeb Bush. Not going to rock the boat. We're going to go in that direction. To you, one more thing about your point, John. Today, Glenn Beck has a theory that Jeb Bush and Romney got together a month ago, which they did. Okay, and the theory is they made a decision and then they made a secret deal that they're not telling us about. But no. He doesn't read the news. I'm amazed by people who don't read the news. After the dinner, Romney came out and said, I'm going to run. So obviously the dinner didn't go well. He changed his mind and now is turning around saying, I had this huge 4-hour call and all my staffers told me I was on meth.
But that's the decision, the whole thing, that he's going to run and that he's not going to. He gets you coming in and going.
Oh, it was a false flag operation. He rode in on Rafalka with the false flag. No, they don't like each other. They were going to run against each other. And then Mitt Romney got talked out of it by his staff, probably by his wife as well. And so now Jeb Bush and him have to pretend to be friends. But by the way, if you read all the news behind it, no. Romney is going to support Christie over Jeb Bush.
Can I complicate that slightly?
Yeah.
I have an interesting quote. We'll see who you think he's talking about here. This was something that Mitt Romney said after announcing that he would not be running. He says, I believe that one of our next generation of Republican leaders, one who may not be as well known as I am today, one who has not yet taken their message across the country, one who is just getting started, may well emerge as being better able to defeat the Democrat nominee. You can't even say Democratic. In fact, I expect and hope that to be the case. That could be Jeb. It could be Christie.
No.
Could be Bolton.
I will give a definitive interpretation of that quote. The primary part of that quote is actually about someone not as well known as me. And the reason he's saying that is because he just came out of that 4-hour meeting with his staff where they told him the same thing that I had been saying to Mitt Romney all along. I'm not sure he watches the Young Turks. He should, though. Which is, hey, schmuck, you got name recognition because you ran for president last year. You were the nominee last time, right? So that doesn't mean that you're the most popular. Like when you actually go to vote, they're not going to vote for you. Just when they're asked now, they're like, oh, I've never heard of Marco Rubio. Mitt Romney, I know Mitt Romney, and they check that.
Yeah.
That's why Joe Lieberman was leading for so long in one of the races that he ran. Joe Lieberman was never going to win the Democratic primary, but he had been the VP nominee earlier with Gore, so that's why he was leading based on name recognition. So that's what his staff told him. Hey, schmuck, just because you're leading the polls doesn't mean that you're not going to lose to a guy with no name recognition when you guys actually start the race. That's why that was top of mind for him. That's why he gives that quote. But the second reason, which is a smaller one, is he doesn't like Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush has enormous name recognition. So he's not going to say, I think the guy who's going to win is a guy with not much of a name. If the guy he likes has the last name Bush. No. We're in the political world. We all know Chris Christie. There's a ton of people not in the political world that don't know Chris Christie. Everybody knows Bush, right? The last name Bush. And finally, just to settle the debate, he gave Chris Christie the top speaking role at his convention when he was the nominee. No,
False
Chris
flag.
Christie and him, they're Wall Street buddies.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like pigs in a
Something.
right? Sties?
Pigs in a
In a
blanket.
silk blanket.
They're pigs that roll around. They're like pigs.
You're like roll around pigs.
They're pigs.
You know, the thing about
Calling him a pig.
Pigs are adorable, though, remember.
Chris Christie, though, last week, he spent a couple of days stocking up on foods and stocking up his pantry, and then someone told him a blizzard was coming. And when they told him a blizzard was coming, he was on its way. He said, "Oh, I'll also have a bomb pop and a dilly bar."
I hope he runs for president just because of the fun we'll have.
No one will elect him because of his belly. It will not happen.